The top 10 movies of the 21st century explained. Spoilers ahead. This is IMDb's list, not mine. Number 10, The Social Network. The Social Network came out in 2010 and was directed by David Fincher, the man behind Seven and Fight Club. Jesse Eisenberg played Mark Zuckerberg, and Andrew Garfield played Eduardo Saverin, his co-founder. The film is focused on the creation of Facebook and everything that occurred because of it. The script was written by Aaron Sorkin, and it's worth mentioning that, as the dialogue is crucial to this film. It's dialogue heavy, people talking in rooms and depositions, but it never drags. Sorkin writes the way people wish that they spoke, and Fincher shoots the film like it's a thriller rather than a dramatic reenactment. That combo is a big part of why this film works as well as it does. The film won 3 Oscars: Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, and Best Film Editing. And it currently sits at 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. A sequel is set to release this year, written and directed by Aaron Sorkin. As for why it's here, the film basically predicted the next 15 years. It came out before anyone was really talking about what social media was doing to people, and it laid the whole thing out. A film about building something to connect people that really is about how lonely it made everyone. A historical reenactment shot like a thriller and with some of the sharpest dialogue ever written. That's why it's number 10. Number 9, Spirited Away. Spirited Away came out in 2001, written and directed by Miyazaki, the man behind My Neighbor Totoro and Princess Mononoke, and probably the most celebrated animator who's ever lived. 10-year-old Chihiro moves to a new town with her parents, takes a wrong turn into a spirit world, and her parents get turned into pigs. She has to work in a bathhouse run by a witch to save them and get home. It holds a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, won the Golden Bear at the Berlin Film Festival, and became the first non-English language film to ever win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. The obvious argument against it being here is that it's a kids' film, but look a bit closer. Chihiro's parents get turned into pigs because they eat food that isn't theirs. The most disgusting creature in the whole bathhouse is a polluted river spirit. The themes aren't hidden, they're right there, and they land just as hard on any adult as they do on a kid. Hardly anything else on this list does that, and that's why it's number 9. Number 8, Get Out. Get Out came out in 2017, written and directed by Jordan Peele, and was Jordan Peele's directorial debut, who up until this point was best known as one half of the comedy duo Key and Peele. Daniel Kaluuya plays Chris, a black man visiting his white girlfriend's family for the first time, and it starts feeling off almost immediately, and then gets a lot worse. It was made for $4.5 million and made $255 million worldwide. It holds a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes and was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor. And Jordan Peele won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, becoming the first African American to ever win in that category. What earns it number 8 is how specific it is. This isn't a film about racism in the broad sense. It's about a very particular version of it, the kind that's polite and welcoming and completely convinced of itself, the kind that says all the right things. Peele took something a lot of people had felt but never really seen on screen and turned it into one of the most gripping horror films in decades. And that's a hard thing to do. That's why it deserves to be here. Number 7, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind came out in 2004, directed by Michael Gondry and written by Charlie Kaufman, the writer behind Being John Malkovich and Adaptation, and one of the most original screenwriters working. Jim Carrey plays Joel, a man who decides to have his ex-girlfriend Clementine, played by Kate Winslet, erased from his memory after a painful breakup. The film follows that erasure in reverse, and somewhere in the middle of losing her, he starts to fall for her all over again. It's worth noting that before this, Jim Carrey was basically only known for comedy, Ace Ventura, The Mask. This film proved that there was a lot more to him. It holds a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes and won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. Why it's at number 7 comes down to the ending. Joel and Clementine find out it all went badly before and know that it will probably go badly again, and they decide to try it anyway. One word said by both, okay, and then the credits. Everything in the film, the whole backward structure, exists just to earn that moment, and that's why it's on this list. Quick pause. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps a ton. And drop a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, back to it. Number 6. No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men came out in 2007 and was directed by Joel and Ethan Coen, the brothers behind Fargo and The Big Lebowski. It's based on the Cormac McCarthy's novel of the same name. Josh Brolin plays Llewellyn Moss, a man who stumbles across a drug deal gone wrong in the Texas desert and decides to take $2 million left behind. What follows is a pursuit. Javier Bardem plays Anton Chigurh, the hitman sent after him, and Tommy Lee Jones plays the aging sheriff trying to make sense of it all. It holds a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes and won 4 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actor for Bardem. Chigurh is one of the greatest screen villains, full stop. The coin flip scene is alone worth the watch, but what earns this film number 6 is the ending. It refuses to give you what you want. The confrontation you've spent 2 hours waiting for doesn't happen. The villain doesn't get caught. Sheriff Bell retires, has a dream, and the film ends. A lot of people found that frustrating when it came out, and that's exactly the point. Evil doesn't get wrapped up neatly, it just keeps going. Number 5. Moonlight. Moonlight came out in 2016 and was written and directed by Barry Jenkins. It follows one character across 3 chapters of his life: childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, with 3 different actors playing him at each stage. He grows up in Miami, in a neighborhood shaped by poverty and drug addiction, raised mostly by a woman called Teresa because his mother can't manage it. Throughout all of it, he's quietly trying to figure out who he is. Mahershala Ali and Naomi Harris co-star, and it holds a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes and won 3 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actor for Mahershala Ali. You probably know how the Oscars went that night. La La Land was announced as Best Picture first, speeches were made, and then it was corrected. Moonlight had actually won, in one of the greatest on-air Academy Award mess-ups in history. The reason it's here is simple. This is a film about someone you almost never see portrayed in this way on screen. A young black man from the projects, gay, quiet, trying to survive in places that don't have much room for him. Jenkins doesn't sensationalize any of it. It's specific and it's tender and it's completely unsentimental. That's very hard to do, and that's why it's number 5. Number 4, In the Mood for Love. In the Mood for Love came out in 2000 and was written and directed by Wong Kar-wai, a Hong Kong filmmaker known for The Chungking Express and Happy Together. Tony Leung plays Mr. Chow and Maggie Chung plays Mrs. Chan. They're neighbours in a 1962 Hong Kong who slowly realise that their spouses are having an affair with each other. The film follows what happens between them after that discovery, which, to be clear, is not very much, and that's entirely the point. Tony Leung won Best Actor at Cannes for this, and the film was nominated for the Palme d'Or, the festival's top prize. Out of everything on this list, it's probably the hardest one to defend on paper. Nothing really happens, 2 people fall for each other and decide not to do anything about it. But the film communicates more through a slow motion shot of Maggie Cheung walking down a narrow staircase than most films manage in 2 hours. It's about restraint, about what people feel and choose not to say. And it's shot like a fever dream of colour and texture. Barry Jenkins said Wong Kar-wai and the film's cinematographer Christopher Doyle were both direct influences on Moonlight, and that tells you something. At number 4, it has to be making an argument for pure filmmaking, for what the medium can do that nothing else can, and it makes that argument better than almost anything else on this list. Number 3, There Will Be Blood. There Will Be Blood came out in 2007 and was written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, the man behind Boogie Nights and Magnolia. Daniel Day-Lewis plays Daniel Plainview, a silver prospector who becomes an oil baron in the early 20th century California. Paul Dano plays Eli Sunday, a local preacher who becomes his rival. The film is essentially the story of 2 men who are mirror images of each other. One worships oil and one worships God, and how each of them destroys everything around them in that pursuit of power. It was nominated for 8 Oscars, winning Best Actor for Daniel Day-Lewis and Best Cinematography. The score was written by Johnny Greenwood, the guitarist from Radiohead, and it's become one of the most distinctive soundtracks of the century. What earns it this place is Daniel Day-Lewis. His performance as Plainview might be the greatest ever put on a film. A man completely in control of every room he walks into, and completely rotten underneath. The final scene in the bowling alley is one of the most unhinged endings in cinema history, and you'll know the line when you hear it. Number 2, Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive came out in 2001 and was written and directed by David Lynch, the man behind Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks. Lynch passed away in January 2025, and this is his masterpiece. Naomi Watts plays Betty, an aspiring actress newly arrived in Hollywood. She meets a woman who survived a car crash and lost her memory entirely, and what follows after that is genuinely hard to describe, and deliberately so. If you've seen it, you know why, and if you haven't, any real summary would be doing you a disservice. Lynch won Best Director at Cannes for Mulholland Drive, and in 2016 BBC Culture polled 177 film critics from 36 countries on the best films of the 21st century, and Mulholland Drive came in at number 1. The honest argument for it being here at number 2 rather than number 1 is this: Mulholland Drive is the best pure film on this list. Not the most culturally important, not the most groundbreaking, but the best film. It does things that only cinema can do. You can't adapt it into a book or a play. You just have to sit in it and let it work on you. The reason it isn't at number 1 on this list is asking a significantly different question. Not just what's the best film, but what's the defining film of the century? And for that, the answer is just ahead. Number 1, Parasite. Parasite came out in 2019, written and directed by Bong Joon-ho, a South Korean filmmaker already known at home for Memories of Murder and Snowpiercer, but not yet a household name in the West. The Kim family are poor, unemployed, and crammed into a semi-basement apartment, surviving on whatever comes along. The Park family are rich, spectacularly, obviously rich, living in a vast architect-designed house above the city. The Kims begin one by one to infiltrate the Park household, first as a tutor, then as an art therapist, then as a driver, then a housekeeper, and then everything falls apart. Parasite was the first Korean film to win the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Then it won 4 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best International Feature Film. Best Picture was the most historic one. No foreign language film had ever won it in the 92 years that the Oscars had been running. It currently holds a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. Before the ceremony, the director gave an interview where he said, "Once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you'll be introduced to so many more amazing films." And that quote matters, because Parasite didn't just win. It changed what mainstream audiences were willing to watch, and where they were willing to look for great cinema. Why is it number 1? Because it does everything at once. It's funny, and then it's a thriller, and then it's genuinely horrifying, and it never once loses its grip on what it's actually about, the gap between the rich and the poor, and what that gap does to people on both sides of it. The Kims aren't villains, and the Parks aren't villains either, but the system that they're all trapped in is. That's a really hard idea to make feel alive on a screen, and Bong Joon-ho makes it feel effortless. There's a moment roughly halfway through where a plot twist lands, and the entire film reshapes itself around it. That's when you know that you're watching something genuinely special. Not just the best film of the year, but the film that explains where the world is right now. That's why it's number 1. So that's the list, 10 films. One thing worth pointing out is look back through these and you'll notice how many of them won the Best Screenplay Award. The Social Network, Eternal Sunshine, No Country for Old Men, Get Out, Moonlight, and Parasite. That's 6 out of 10. Whatever else you want to say about this list, it's a list that rewards great writing. The films that last tend to be the ones that started with something worth saying. And look, it's a pretty good list. It's bold in places. In the Mood for Love at 4, Mulholland Drive at 2, and it's hard to argue with Parasite at the top. But the honest truth is that pinning down the top 10 films of an entire century so far, especially the one we're living in now, is basically impossible. There are thousands of films that could have made a genuine case for being here. Someone else runs this list and maybe Children of Men get in, or There Will Be Blood sits higher, or a film none of us have even seen yet rewrites the whole conversation. That's kind of the point though. The best thing a list like this can do is give you a place to talk and to start a conversation. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe. See you in the next one.